Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into Tableau for the night. I had an example that, if you remember last week, I wanted to get into. I just didn't. There was no way we would have got through it on time. I don't think. I sit down and I go through these in my office, and then it takes 3 times longer when I lecture about it. So, haven't figured that out yet. I've got 2 data sets out here in week 5 all the way down at the bottom. I had them in week 4 as well. I copied them over, so they're in both places. U.S. delayed commercial flights, and then also another data set for airports. So if you want to go ahead and pull both of those down. Go ahead and you can load up first. Just start with, if you're going to go ahead and load it, load the U.S. delayed commercial flights into Tableau. And I'm going to actually pop the data sets open. I want to show you a couple things before we start with it. Okay, so again, a little different. These are CSV files. They're not Excel files. So, of course, if you're familiar with CSV, they're parsed a little bit differently. So in the U.S. delayed commercial flight data, I popped it open. So you're going to have columns for airline name, the actual airline. So it's the short symbol. Arrival delay, arrival time, date, day of the week, the flight number, the destination airport, number of records, origin airport, and then scheduled arrival. And then the other sheet that we have to get to connect it all together is, airports are all connected via an IATA code, which I think is the International Airline Transportation Association, I think is what that stands for. That's what we're used to using, right? When we go online to book travel, if you lived in Kansas City long enough, you know that while you'd think our airport should be KCI, it's actually MCI. And if I want to go to Orlando, I know that Orlando is MCO, right? So that's kind of the 3-character standard. With data, data with airline data, I've been looking at this quite a bit the last few months. What's interesting is any airport with 3-character IATA codes, that signifies that it is a commercial airport. Okay, big airport, that means your 727, 737s, big planes can land there. 4-character airports, okay, those are your smaller commuter airports, right? So Wheeler Airport downtown is, I think, KLXN. Okay, so by that code, we know that while in an emergency, I could land a Southwest Airlines 737 there, it would be a little less than desirable, right? Especially if you're the one sitting on that plane, right, when it hits the runway. Having landed at Wheeler before on a small plane, I freaked out thinking about the thought of Air Force One landing there. So anyway, good pilots. So, all right. So of course, with that, we're using this to make the connection to what that IATA code is to actually the airport name, but then we also need to give it the geospatial data, right? So city, state, country, latitude, longitude is all there, okay? All right. So I'll start by loading the airline data in. So since I'm going with the CSV file, I'm going to have to go to the More option. All right, so big data set. This is the biggest one we've loaded in thus far. So we can do one of 2 things. We can just say we're okay with not seeing the data trickle in, or if you hit the update now, it's going to pull in some of our rows, okay? All right, so as what we're going to ultimately end up doing here is we want to create, our end result is creating a map to where we can select a given city and actually show what we would call a destination map, okay? So connecting the endpoints of I want to be able to pick, say, for example, MCI, the Kansas City Airport, and from that, I want Tableau to show me every delayed flight and where it went out of Kansas City, as Kansas City is the hub. Okay, so the idea is, the business question is, what are flights out of Kansas City that have bad delay rates? Make sense? So that's what we're going for. So the first thing we need to do is we've got to do some data work here to make this happen. And since we got to blend some data together, the first thing that we have to do is we have to create a union with our data. Okay, so to do that in Tableau, to actually create a union, so I just need to take my table and then append another table right onto it. Okay, pretty easy. I click and I drag my delayed flight data here, and then I bring it, and there's a little sweet spot where you see right underneath, it'll start to light up and say drag table to union. Okay, bring it up till it turns orange. Okay, let go, and here's where you can just vaguely see, if you look at it, it'll give the appearance of almost like a 3D effect. Okay, and if you wanted to, you could scroll, and look at your record count and see that now we have that data appended on there twice. Okay, and it'll make sense here in a minute why we're doing that. Again, we've got to connect the dots of arrival airport, or excuse me, departure airport and arrival airport. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to create what we want to call a route identifier. Okay, so what's interesting is up to this point we've done our calculated fields actually from our sheet and gone in and done it there. For what we need to do here with pulling this together, we're going to create several of our calculated fields from this view. Okay, and you'll see why I'm doing that. It makes a little more sense to do it this way. Okay, so I'm going to go to origin airport. Okay, and that's about 10 fields to the right. And I'm going to click down arrow up at the top, and I'm going to say create calculated field. Okay, and I'm going to name this field route identifier. Okay, so again, going back to our data, our underlying data, right? Here's what I've got. And I need to get this to the point where I kind of put it together with my origin airport and my destination airport. Okay. Right now you can see they're two very separate. So just like in Excel, I concatenate. Essentially what I want to do. I want to concatenate two fields together in Tableau. Okay. So pretty straightforward. So since I click the down arrow on origin airport, right, just like if I'm actually in my data sheet view and I go create calculated field off a field, it pulls in that field for me, right? So to concatenate, I'm simply going to use a plus sign. I'm going to use an open quote, an underscore, and a close quote. Another plus sign, and then destination airport. Okay, so my end result is sorry, did that wrong. That's what my field is going to turn out as, right? All right, so say OK. And what I like about doing it this way is creating the calculated field here, I can see it real time, okay? So it's put together and it said my origin airport, SFO, my destination airport, CLT. I can kind of spot check. I see that visual that, hey, I'm doing this right. All right, now I need to define the route order, okay? So my origin airport is where I start. My destination airport is where I end, okay? So I've got to specify that. So I'm going to come over here to my table name. I'm going to click my down arrow again, and I'm going to say create calculated field, and I'm going to call this route order. Do an underscore. So now I'm just going to do a basic if statement. So I'm going to do if table name equals And then now I need to grab this table name right here. Okay. Now this is again what makes it pretty easy with creating our calculated fields here is I need that whole table name, which is U.S. delayed commercial flights, in parentheses, January space 2015, close parentheses, .csv. That sounds like a pain in a lot of ways to cause heartache. So I'm just going to come over here. I'm going to right click on that. I'm going to bring it over here. I'm going to paste it in. Now you'll see it brought in extra. It brought in the actual table name as my column header. So I'll just simply delete that. I'm going to back this up. I'm going to go with a single quote. And then now, if that is true, then I'm going to populate this as my origin airport. Okay? Otherwise, it will be my destination airport. End. All right. Okay, that's wrong order. Okay, so then you should be able to come over here and see your route order field that you just made. And sure can. There you go. Good? Okay. All right, so I'm going to go to table name again. I'm going to do another calculated field. I'm going to call this route location. So on the front end, I'm going to say if table name equals, and essentially I'm just repeating the same thing here. Just my last qualifier is going to be different. I think I got one mixed up. Hang on just a second. Let me finish this one. I need to go back and check one. All right, give me just a second here. I need to check my route order one. I think I did that wrong. Oh, yep. Okay, so go back to your route order one, so the one we made right before this one. Had my notes mixed up here. So this we're going to set it to a 1, and then our else parameter is a 2. So this is basically how we're identifying the front end of the flight versus the back end of the flight. Is this where you took off from, or is this where you landed at? Okay. So again, connecting the dots here is, remember we created a union here. So we took this table, we appended a whole other copy of the table underneath it, okay? So if I was to scroll down far enough, once I get to the appended table, we're going to see this number switch to a 2, okay? So then we can drive logic off of that and say, if it's a 1, then I need to look at the front end of the identifier. If it's a 2, I need to look at the back end, okay? All right, so now we're going to get a little creative. We're going to drag our airport CSV file. So if you haven't loaded that yet, go ahead and load the airport CSV file. I'm going to drag that over. And now, of course, anytime you try to blend a data source, right, Tableau is saying inner, left, right, or full outer join, okay? This one we're going to go a little bit different, okay, because we're actually wanting to use what's called a join calculation, okay, to make this happen. So instead of an inner, an outer, or anything like that, we're going to use an actual join calculation. So what I'm going to do, instead of trying to retype all this, is I'm going to, for now, I'm going to close this window. I'm going to come over here to the field I created for route location. I'm going to go to Edit. I'm going to copy this whole statement. Okay, so that entire if statement for my route location calculation, right? Say OK. Then I come back up here. It's wanting me to fix my join. I'm going to say create join calculation. I'm going to paste that exact same statement in there. Okay? That's for your left side. For my airport CSV file, this is where I'm going to go to that IATA code. Okay? So what I'm doing is, again, I'm taking this statement and I'm saying, if it's got the 1, then I'm looking at the first 3 letters. If it's the 2, I'm looking at the last 3 letters. Okay? All right, so we're done here. Our join's good. Everybody's happy. I'm going to go to my sheet. And one trick when you've got blended data sets like this, quite frankly, I don't really have a preference, but I do tend to go back and forth depending on the size of my blended data sets. I like to go to group by and show it by folder. Sometimes it works a little bit better that way. All right, so we've done a lot of work on the front end, so now let's actually map this. So I'm going to come down here, and to start, I'll just double click on latitude and longitude, okay? And now I'm going to take that route identifier calculated field that I made, and I'm going to bring this to the detail card, okay? So now it's plotting all of those routes, all right? And then I want to do arrival delay, and I want that to be for size. So, of course, we could just drop it onto the size card. The other way you can add size to a map is just drag that measure and just throw it out in the middle of the map. Okay, and see you can see it adds it to the marks card as the size attribute. Okay. The other thing I want to do is by default, when I'm doing size, it brought it in as sum. Okay, I don't want to use sum. When I'm looking at airline delays, anytime we measure airline delays, I always look at the overall average, right? So my overall gate-to-gate time, my overall delays, all that stuff is typically done with average. Okay? I'm going to change that to average. Okay, so now I want to flip this so I've got a destination map, right? So I want to go, what does it look like from here to here? Well, I can't do that with dots, so I need to come up here to my marks type, and I need to change this to line, okay? All right, fabulous chart. We're done. Turn it in. Everybody's happy, okay? I'm tired, but I'm not that tired, okay? All right, so next we need to use our calculated field for route order, and we need to drop that to path, okay? Now, while this looks like someone puked blue on a map, this is actually dialing in for us, okay? So the next thing we want to do is, because what this is doing is this is taking every single airport and showing every single destination, okay? So think about that. Of course, the map looks cluttered, right? All right, so next I'm going to take my origin airport, and I'm going to drop that to my filters. I'll select all, I'll say OK. I'm going to show my filter, and then come over here, and I want to change this to a single value drop down. Okay, so now suddenly, what I like about this is Tableau changed this I don't know how long ago, where I've also got an embedded search in here, right? So I can just search. There's MCI. Okay, so now this looks a little more representative, right? So I've got MCI, Kansas City International, in the center, and it's branching out to all of the places where it goes. Okay. So now all we've done at this point is we've just kind of mapped where everything goes. Okay, and we've sized the width of our line based on our arrival delays. Okay, so to take this to the next step, I'm going to take latitude, and I'm going to bring that up to my rows and bring in a second latitude. Okay. That's not what I wanted. Hang on here. No. Okay, why is my map disappearing on me all of a sudden? Thank you. Sheesh. Latitude. That's better. Okay. And we'll take it to dual axis. Okay. So now I'm going to go to my first latitude card over on the left. And I'm going to adjust my size a little bit upward. I'm going to come down to my bottom marks card, and I want to change this guy to a type of circle. I'm going to drop the size of my lines down a little bit here. They're just a little bit beefy for me here. Okay, so now let's get my arrival delay here onto color. And I want to change my colors. I want to go to more of like a red scheme here. The darker the red, the worse off I am. Okay. The other thing that I want to do is by default here, if I go to here, it's kind of hard to see on this projector, but is what Tableau has defaulted in here is what they call a halo setting, to where it's created a halo on the line. And when you've got this much going on with the view, this doesn't work out so well. So if you just click on color, you can see you've got this halo. It's set to automatic. And I'm going to flip that to none. A couple other changes I'm going to make. If I come up here, that's already correct. My color for arrival delay, you can see it's defaulted to some. I want to change that to average. It keeps jacking with my color here. Just a couple other finer points to clean up. All right, now, one thing, if you throw red on a map, one thing I always like to do is go to map options, map layers here. And I like to change this to a dark background, okay? And I'm still not totally jacked about the size of my lines here, so that's a little better if I drop them down one more, okay? So now I can see that, I can spill my water, my worst offender here kind of appears to be either Kansas City International down to FLL, I think it's Fort Lauderdale, or MCI to Houston, which is kind of interesting because what carrier runs most commonly from MCI to Houston? Anybody know? Southwest Airlines. That's one of their hubs. Okay, so All right. Okay, so last week when we broke out for table collaboration, Paul made a really cool chart that we are not going to make in this class because, Paul, how long did it take you to make it? It was, yeah, 2 hours, he said. He kind of talked me through last Thursday what he did. It's a cool kind of chart. It would literally occupy pretty much a whole class period if we sat down and made it. But I did ask him if he would be cool enough to connect and kind of show us what he did. So I'm going to have him come up and show this chart that he made so you guys can see it. So, and keep in mind, 2 hours, this is a guy that's, you would consider a active Tableau user. So, yeah, so, where you fall in there, it might all depend, okay? Do you have Air Media installed? Or okay, cool. I'll pause my sharing. You don't have to hold this. I'm just going to set this mic here so the people that aren't here tonight, it gets picked up.
Sounds great.
So anything you say that's wrong will be incriminating against you later is how this works.
So this was the dashboard that I created for homework number 2. I think really the graph that, or the visualization that Dave's really talking about is the Sankey diagram that's on the left-hand side there. I kind of always wanted to create one. I saw one in one of the Tableau Visit of the Weeks. If anyone looks at those and nerds out on that, there was one created and I had no idea what it was. I had to Google what it was at that time, and kind of always wanted to create one. Had no idea really how to do it. So the best thing you can do in Tableau if you want to create a visualization is to literally just get on YouTube, because everybody's done one, and we'll have it on there, and they'll go step by step on how to do it. The main thing with a lot of these, whether you're doing a starburst chart or whether you're doing Sankey diagram or anything like that, is really you have to manipulate your data a whole lot. So it really doesn't work really well with any data that you're using at work a lot of times, because for instance, this is actually a union in order to create this, and I'll kind of talk about that. If you're doing something with 10 million rows, do you really actually want to double that information? Because that's just going to slow Tableau down even more, even if you are using an extract. So I'll kind of go through. So kind of the functionality of this, if you don't know what a Sankey diagram is it's showing the flow of data. So from left side to right side, it's showing you basically the lines are a volume, typically a sum or an average. In this case, this is a snapshot of 15 large cap stocks. This could just as easily be something that is a mutual fund or something like that, if you want to see the breakdown of that and where things flow. So basically on the left side here, you have each of the stocks. This happens to be volume for that day, so trading volume, so how much that stock was traded that given day. And then also the flow of that information and which sector they are in. So sectors being set by technology, industrials, whatever they necessarily are. So that's kind of what this signifies. This could be, stock price, anything like that as well, if you wanted it to be that also. The Sankey diagram itself is actually made up of 3 parts. The first one that you have are the lines themselves, and kind of what it's made up of is a number of different things. The first thing you have to do with this is like I said, it's a union of information. You have basically your left side was identical to your right side, but they are identified in 2 different ways. Specifically here we have a, let me go to my padded real quick. Actually, this is too bad, I believe. Yeah. So I have a left side which I have called 1, and a right side, which I've called 49. It could be whatever number you want it to be. Essentially, this is creating 49 sections from left side to right side. That's what helps get this nice little curve and help it blend correctly. So that's kind of what you're doing with this, and that's also what it helps match up against also. So whenever you're looking at this, just think that it is basically just 49 little sections all the way across, and that's what creates that curve, or helps create that curve blended. So with this, you have to create a few different calculations with this, one of which is T. The person that created this, that's what they called it. I'm not sure if there's actually any reason for that. T is basically just an index, is all it's creating. It's creating an index for the left side and an index for the right side, and then it's chucking that up into basically the way the math works out is basically each percentage is a quarter. So you actually have the left side is actually -6% and the right side is actually +6%, and then you have a ranking from there. So it knows where to take the information from the left side to the right side and how to rank those. The other thing that you get to create in here as well is a sigmoid. If you're a stats person, you'll understand basically the sigmoid is kind of what's helping create that bend there. This is the calculation for a sigmoid. You can Wikipedia it. It is 1 divided 1 plus e. There is no e in Tableau, so you just take the exponent raised to the first, or I guess it's really just the exponent itself. So is what it is, which is what e is, and then you have to raise it to t. Is what it is. So this is where some of these can be really funky, and unless you watch a video, you have no idea how they're created. And then basically you're doing a number of different table calculations for this in order to make it work. So with this, you will have, and this is kind of important, and you'll do this depending on what kind of visualizations you're kind of trying to create. But my left side is my ranking 1, which is what is kind of based on my index. And then I also have a ranking 2, which is my right side. And all I did was just change which table calc is in the top and bottom here. So if you'll notice, those two are a little bit different. So there, and that kind of changes. So this kind of shows you that those lines there and how those are created from there. And then after that, it's like a normal visualization, because you're basically just throwing volume size for your size of your line, and then any colors that you would like for segments or anything like that. And then the last thing, to create these guys on the ends, you do have to create, figure out which ones they are. Yes, stocks. Is you have to create basically, these are just bar charts. Stack bar charts is all they are, and you can line them up on either side of that Sankey there, and you have to play around with it just a little bit to kind of make it work. So that's.
How did you line it up?
How did I line it up? I'm a big fan of tiled everything. I don't like to do floats just because sometimes they work, but I like tile just for OCD purposes. Basically, the best way I can say is, so I laid these next to each other. There are gaps. And if you ever use the layouts chart, which is really handy here, you have these inner padding and outer paddings. So I take away all the outer paddings, so that way it sucks up to the next visualization next to it. And then it didn't quite line up right in terms of the lines, so I just changed these to be independent. So unlock that and just move the top down until it looked right. That's all it did, because they didn't quite line up the first time around. It's never quite that perfect. And same thing for the other side. It's probably slightly different. No, it's actually 11's the same. So they worked out the same there. And that's.
By the date as well, or is it independent?
Yeah. Nope. So the date on this one, I don't know why I'm looking up there. I have it right in front of me.
Yeah, that'll jack with you because there's a delay. So if you look at the projector while you're trying to follow with your mouse movements, you'll be messed up.
Yeah, the date does affect this as well. It also changes my title. So if you don't know how to do that, it's really easy. But it affects it. And then the other thing I think you wanted me to show was the action items.
Yeah.
So I also have action items in this dashboard. If you haven't used those, they can be used for a number of different things. The main thing they're used for, though, is highlighting purposes, is what they are. So this actually will highlight based on what logo I'm hovering over. So when these are just shapes, you can load shapes into Tableau really easily. If you just find the logo online, you can load it in. It's, if you just Google that with Tableau, it'll tell you how to do it. But basically, you're just throwing them into a folder, and then any way you would create a shape within Tableau, you can change that. But actions are a really easy way to kind of highlight different aspects, and you can do that either by hovering over these items or by selecting them as well. So if you create, let me go figure out which field this is in. I think this is logos. Quick looking at it. Yep. So stock logo. So I just created a quick little, basic linear selection of my logos here from my shapes themselves. So here I have a section called logo shapes that I loaded in to Tableau. Just find some vector files, and then once you put those in, you can go up here to your dashboard, to actions. You can also do this within a worksheet as well. It has the same functionality within it. You can create your action. So I created this action here. I'll just go to edit. Basically what you're saying is that you have a source sheet. So this would be the sheet that you brought in. So this is my stock logo sheet, the sheet where it wants to get the information from, and then I want it to affect all my other sheets except for the stock sheet. And I did select hover. You can also select. Actions are also really good if you want to drill down, or if you want to, there's a lot of functionality other than just highlighting things. And basically just, this is a simple one, so just said okay, and then now anything that is labeled chevron will be highlighted, similar to how you do a highlight within each individual dashboard. It basically will do it for your entire dashboard. So, any questions?
So that where he's talking about with those custom shapes, there is a directory nested within your Tableau structure, a folder where you can import in anything you want. So I've seen people do cool stuff like this or with different shapes and stuff, and it's real easy for them to just simply copy and paste that folder to you. So if you find someone that has a really cool shapes folder, hey, can I get your shapes folder? You can build your own folder structure in there. So like when I do work for companies, I'll build each one of them a folder, for their company, and then bring in any logos and stuff that they have. So it makes it real easy to kind of make it your own. So
cool.
Awesome. Thanks for showing that. And if anyone's interested, I didn't make it. I'll preface it with that. I have another example of a Sankey diagram with all the stuff in there as well. So if you want to see a different one from what he did, I'm happy to share that with you. Just send me a message. So. Might be in stereo, Thank you. Okay. So to just real quickly build on what he just showed with the actions, I'm gonna hop over to Superstore real quick and show you another way that you can use actions that's pretty useful to make the dashboard a little more powerful. So if I go to Superstore and I just, for example, just real simple, I can take sales and subcategory and make a bar chart. I'll sort it. I'll drop sales on my label. Drag that out a little bit. Okay, so I'll name this subcategory sales. I'll create another one that just looks at the number of records that I actually have in subcategory. And for this, I'll just create a simple text table. Okay. I'll name this one number of records. Then I'll do one more for profit. And again, just make a simple text table. And I might clean it up a little bit here with my profit since I'm having currency values. I'm going to go currency custom. Much like we talked earlier, I don't really need to see decimal places. I'm talking dollars in this capacity. I'll come back over to my bar chart. I'm going to make it match real quick. Get this flipped over to currency since it's sales as well. Okay, get rid of those two. All right, so here's the other thing you can do with actions. So I'm going to take my my number of records that I made. I'm going to pull it up to the top. Profit, I'm also going to put up here at the top. And then I'm going to take my subcategory sales, and I'm going to drop this guy down here at the bottom. It's more like that. I'll fit my view real quick. All right, so then what I can do that really kind of bumps this up a notch is I can come down here. I'm just using my subcategory sales. I come down here and I say use as filter, and it looks like nothing happened. But then what I really like about this is what I can do is I can come in and I can click anything in the bar chart, okay? And since that's the chart I picked, then it will reflect that up above, okay? So then if I want to, then I can really start to capitalize on some of that space, right? So again, just another way, this is also considered an action, right? So I'm clicking on one thing and it's causing my charts to reflect, okay? All right. Let's see. So let's do one more real quick before we wrap up for the night. So let me just do it this way instead of flipping over. So I mentioned waffle chart, and some of you kind of looked at me like I was crazy, and that's okay. I was that way as well. So what is a waffle chart? Think of those square Eggo waffles, right, that Mom used to throw in the toaster for you. Okay, a waffle chart is essentially that, right? They're individual squares, or in this case, like you can see, other shapes. Okay, we'll do one with squares, and the idea is that represents part to the whole, right? So typically, never say always, but typically this is a 10 by 10 matrix, right? So each one represents 1% of the whole. Okay, this is great when you're representing populations, anything of that sort, okay? Now, in order to do that, to successfully create a waffle chart, one thing that you need, and quite frankly, I thought when I first started playing with these, I thought I was gonna have to create one myself. I just went out and Googled waffle chart template, and what do I get? I find an Excel file, okay? And this is all you need, okay? And if you study this for just a minute, you'll see that, row 1, it's showing, 1%, 2%, 3, that sort of thing. So pretty straightforward, okay? So let's just visualize it, and you can see what it actually looks like, okay? All right. Tell you what, let me pop open a new Tableau because this one I've already worked with a little. Just a second. All right, load my waffle chart template. There's waffle and waffle detailed. All you need is the waffle. Now I'm getting hungry. All right, so it defines these as measures, which they don't need to be. So I'm going to take column, and I'm going to drag it up to dimensions. I'm going to take row, and I'm also going to drag it up to dimensions. And then after I've done that, I'm going to place them on the respective column and row. Okay, so basically I've given myself a 10 by 10 row column grid now. And if I want to see if I've got it right, I just take percentage and I drop it onto text. Okay, and I'm probably going to change my format here so you can see a little bit better. So I go to Format, and I'll flip this guy over to percentage. Okay, so now you can see upper left corner, row 1, column 1, 1%, row 1, column 2, 2%, okay? But keep in mind, my typical view of a waffle chart, as you see them, I typically start at the bottom and work my way up, okay? So pretty easy, right? I just need to flip my sort, okay? So all I need to do is I need to come up here to my row, and I need to go to sort, and I'll change this so that I am sorted to descending, okay? So now you can see that 1% comes down here to the bottom. So what that means is when I'm done with this, if I only have 2% filled in, then my first 2 spots are going to be here and here, okay? So if I wanted to see it the other way, and some people do, I want to see 1% over here, then I got to do that same sorting on my columns in addition to my rows, okay? All right, so I'm not going to leave that there because I don't want percentages coming in. I want to do it differently. So I'm going to go ahead and remove my text label, close out my format window, and now let's go ahead and load in our Superstore data set. Pull in the order sheet and back to it. Okay, so I'm going to play around with profit ratio. So let's just create a calculated field real quick for profit ratio. And I'll just do the sum of my profit divided by the sum of my sales. Okay. So now I'm going to come to my newly created calculated field. And the other thing I want to do is I need to change my default properties, and I want to alter my number format. I want this to be a percentage, and I only want it to be 1 decimal place. Okay? So then I'll take that calculated field I just made, my profit ratio, and I'm going to throw this down on color. Okay? So, we good? No. Okay? So what this has done is, since I've got an unblended data set now, is this just saying, okay, I've calculated profit ratio for the entire data set. So if you mouse over it, you see as I move through the different blocks, it's showing 12% for everything, okay? So I'm just going to take this, and instead I'm going to drop it to my detail shelf, and that'll make more sense for us here in a minute, okay? All right, so let's go back to our waffle chart data set, okay? And we need to create a calculated field to turn these boxes colors for us instead. So I'm going to go create calculated field, and I'm going to name this box to color. Oops. All right, so box to color. I'm going to look at my profit ratio, okay? And if you've never been in this situation before, I'm pointing, you see up above in the data window, I'm pointing to my waffle chart data, but I'm referencing data from Superstore. So that's why when I type profit ratio, it auto texts for me and puts in the qualifier to call that other data set, okay? So then I'm just gonna simply say greater than or equal to the sum of the percentage in my waffle chart data, okay? And this is just going to create a simple Boolean kind of true-false variable for us. So then once we're done with that, we'll take that field, box to color, and we're going to drop that on the color shelf. Okay, so now we're starting to kind of take the shape of an actual waffle chart. Now again, to get back to kind of what I'm seeing here, right, of a blue versus a gray, okay, I want to alter my color a little bit. So I'll come up here, I'll edit my colors. True is what I want to be blue. False, I want to take kind of this gray color. Say OK. So now our next problem is, while this kind of looks like a bar or a waffle chart to me, and I could go through and I could hide my column headings, my row headings, and it would kind of get there. Unfortunately, when I go to size, things don't exactly work out so well. Okay, so I got to do something a little bit different here. So I'm going to come up to the column shelf, and I'm going to click to the right, and I'm just going to kind of put in a dummy average of 1 to kind of trick it for me. Okay, so then now we can see what happens is it now totally fills that area for me. So I've got a little bit other work I need to do first, though. So I'm going to come and just double click on one of the fields in my x-axis, and if you'll notice, the automatic axis, it's giving me a value of 0 to 1.05. Okay, I'm wanting to be 0 to a whole 1. Okay, so I need to change this from an automatic axis to a fixed axis. So I'll flip it to fixed, and I'll set this value to 1. Okay, that's better. I'm going to click it again, right-click it. I'm going to take that header away. Okay. So then now, if I increase my size up a little bit, everything's working a little bit better. Next up, I'm going to come to color. I'm going to go to my border, and I want to give this a white border just to make it stand out a little bit more. Now the other thing I want to do is now I want to go for this shape that I've got right here. Okay, so I'm going to bring this in to where it kind of resembles that of a square. Okay. Flip it to fill the entire view. Things are starting to look up here. Okay. All right, so now that I've done that, I can get rid of all of these headings and labels here that I don't need. Okay, so I'm going to come to row. I'm going to unclick show header. Come to row again. I'm going to uncheck the tooltip portion because I don't want that showing up in my tooltip. So you can see now all I'm getting is the column tooltip in my box. So I'll do the same for column. I'm going to remove the header. I'm going to remove the show and tooltip. Now, the other thing I want to get is I need to get to this point right here, okay, where I put that, where I'm actually showing the computation, right? So how much of this is actually filled, okay? So the easy way to do that is just do it with an annotation, okay? So go roughly in the middle of the chart is kind of the easy way to do it. And then if you right-click and go annotate, okay, and then from there just say you want to annotate a mark, all right? Now what I'm wanting this to show me is is this, my profit ratio. Okay, so it's got to call the whole sheet. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to get rid of everything except for what's in here. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this profit ratio on the front end and everything else underneath, right? I'm going to zap that, get rid of that, and now I'm going to make this guy bigger, bump this up to a 22-point font, bold, centered, say OK. Now, this is always kind of a trick to move these guys, but move it to the middle of my page, and then I can play with my border if I want. So if I right-click here again, I can go to Format, and a couple things I like to do is get rid of the shading, okay, and then come down here to my line and actually remove the line. Okay. All right. In fact, honestly, I would go. I could shrunk my font size back down here. Take a look at that. Okay, so I might play with that a little bit more since I got it set to fit the entire view. It's showing me quite a bit. So, all right. So the other thing I could do is I could play with filters on here to alternate back and forth. So on my orders data set, so I could bring in, I like to use region here. So bring in region to my filter. Important thing to note, since I did not blend these data sets, there's no logical parameter to blend these two data sets together, right? I've got this waffle chart template, and then I've got all this Superstore data. So there's no way to blend it. So if you'll notice, I keep getting these. I turned my alerts off. You might have been getting alerts. I was getting an option right here, and then this is also what's triggering my null to show up, okay? So I'll just ignore it. So then you could change it for whichever one you want. Okay, so waffle chart, pretty straightforward once you get through kind of the building blocks. They all build the same way. All right, so let me give you a preview of the final project. And unfortunately, I don't have final approval from the people I got the data from to give you the data yet, but I'm hoping to have that by tomorrow because I will be seeing them. So what I have for you is this is a real live scenario. There's a physician practice I've been working with for about 5 years now, and they have, I want to say, 12 offices across the metro area. And they are struggling with a staffing situation. They can't staff all of their offices. So about 2 years ago, I went through and I helped them kind of decide which of these practices does it make sense to shut down. Okay, now how did I do it? I took all of their geospatial data for all of their practices, where they were located, okay, city, state, zip code, address, right? Plotted that into Tableau, and then I exported all of the data out of their EHR, and I looked at where the patient lived, what their zip code was, and I looked at where they went to go to the doctor, okay? And then I looked at how far they traveled to go to the doctor. And in many cases, without giving it away to you guys, what we found was if we shut down a couple practices, it would not impact the quality of care, and in most cases, it resulted in the patients having a very small amount added onto their drive, okay? So is what my client loved about it was I mapped all of it in Tableau, okay? So gave them the opportunity to answer that question and let them play with it with filters and move things around and see, if we close this location, what does it look like? If we close that location, what does it look like? Okay, so that's what you guys are going to do. I'm going to give you that data. Like I said, they were okay with it. I cleaned the data, removed all of the patient identifiers. There really weren't much in there. There was some address data that actually had house number in it that, of course, I stripped out. I meet with them again tomorrow. They give me the final approval if I can let you guys see the data if they say it was truly de-identified. If they don't say it's de-identified, I'm going to lose my healthcare IT nerd card, okay? Because I'm pretty sure I got it, okay? But I want them okay with it before I turn it over to you. So you guys will have to do a little bit of scrubbing with some data, okay? Determine the patient volume at each location, which locations are top performers, which ones are at the bottom. You'll do all this by, of course, creating charts to show it, okay? And what is the average distance a patient travels from their home to a respective office location, okay? And then you'll make the recommendation of what do we shut down, okay? And I hope your recommendation matches mine because I felt pretty confident in it, but I might be wrong, okay? And then what you'll do is you'll format this, in those of you that took the first Viz class with me, same concept. You'll format it into a PowerPoint that'll ideally be a roughly 10 to 15 minutes that you would present to the board. So again, like the last class I taught on this, we don't have time for 18 people to give 10 to 15 minute presentations. We would have had to start that tonight, okay? So just like last time, you can do this one of a couple ways. You can create all the charts, and then in kind of the notes section of PowerPoint, you could put your talking points. If you're more comfortable with having your voice recorded, I'm still not, and I've been doing it for over 5 years up here, but I do it anyway. You're welcome to use as a Rockhurst student, you have access to screen capturing software, Screencast-O-Matic, that will capture your screen and your voice, even your webcam, if you want me to see your face while you do it, okay? You can do it that way. You can use the embedded PowerPoint feature, absolutely. Yeah. So I was hoping to have the data for you guys tonight. I couldn't get in front of them. The first time they could see me was tomorrow afternoon. So I'm hoping to get their final 2 thumbs up. But I did want to at least give you kind of an idea of what we're after here, be a chance for you to employ a whole bunch of your skills. You know, obviously mapping will be one of them. You're probably going to want to manipulate some dates. You kind of want to look at some level of detail, okay? Think about what good design looks like. So it's kind of what I'm going to hit you with. Oh, what questions can I answer for you guys? I will give you an assignment next week. You don't have one tonight. So there's only one homework assignment left. Yeah, so I won't hit you with one tonight. So yep.
It's not due next Friday?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'll introduce it next Thursday. How about that? Everybody good? No. Yeah, so I backed it up from, hang on here. Yeah, so I hit it with 10/18. So again, I kind of look at when final grades are due, back it up. This is one of the smaller Viz classes I've ever had. So this will be a little easier for me to get these graded. But yeah, so that'll work for my timeline. That'll give me, I have nothing scheduled that Friday after Friday the 19th. So I'll be sitting home with a cup of tea grading all of your Viz projects. So this is my only 8-week class. My other classes are all 16-weekers right now, so I won't have other grades to jack with, so that'll help. So, any other questions? I'll have the data next week for you guys. I'll introduce it to you, and you can kind of see what's out there. If I get the approval tomorrow, I'll load the data ahead of time, but I'll spend some time talking about it in class on Thursday, okay? All right, guys, have a good night, and I'll see you in a week.